And welcome to another fun-filled episode of that 4K podcast. Ari Rosenbaum here with Dan Mantori. Dan, how are you?
Doing great, sir. Absolutely wonderful. How you doing?
Good. It's only been a day that I haven't seen you.
I know we met yesterday, and I know you had a recent loss there. It was, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brown number 2 passed on?
Yeah. The last gerbil of the Brown family died, and I don't know if you knew this, but when I saw you yesterday for lunch, I had, before I went to lunch, I got a new gerbil, and I left him in the car. It wasn't that hot, so, it was 60 degrees, 65-degree weather. And I had him in a box, and there's a hole on top of the box. Now, it would take, a regular gerbil. They wouldn't be able to jump out of it. So when I saw you and Larry leave, I get into my car, and all of a sudden there's no gerbil in the box.
Oh, no.
And I'm freaking out. And all of a sudden I hear, thumping from the gerbil. And, I go underneath my seats, and for, a good 10 minutes after I left you, I was trying to find that gerbil. And, you don't want to be known as a gerbil killer or whatever, but...
No.
I found the gerbil, and he's safe, and, he's in the... He's in the cage with the other gerbil that may or may not be his actual brother, so we'll see how that goes.
We're waiting for the DNA testing to come back.
I don't know about that, but yeah, that was a lot of fun yesterday.
Always keeping it interesting.
Yeah, and we went to the Yankee game on Wednesday, which was a lot of fun.
We did. That was probably the least baseball I've ever watched.
Yeah, we talked a lot more than we watched, but it was a good fun event.
It was.
I don't even remember the score.
Got to check out a lot of the park that I hadn't seen before, and got to spend it with you guys. And it was a great day.
Absolutely. So that was a lot of fun, and of course, we still got Denver to talk about, that 401k conference at Coors Field on the 14th, June.
2 weeks away.
Yeah, 2 weeks from today that we recorded this, and a week away from, when people are hearing it. So if you haven't signed up, go to that 401ksite.com. It's going to be a lot of fun, game, all that kind of stuff, and whatnot. So it's entertaining, and we're going to have a lot of fun and a lot of good presentations and all that kind of stuff.
And don't we film these? Remember from Kansas City?
I think don't we record them? Because
was that it? What was the misapplication of the what verb did we misapply?
I think we said film.
Was it film?
Yeah, tape. No, it was tape.
Sounds good.
You can't tape anything without tape.
That was it.
And you can't film anything without filming, but you still can record without,
That was it.
So yeah.
I got my plane worked out. I'm unfortunately flying back through that crappy airport known as LaGuardia, but.
Yeah. I still have to book mine. I'll probably book it over the weekend. I still got to figure it out. That's always kind of fun. And we're really looking forward to that. And then, of course, we'll be September in Cleveland, October New England at Gillette Stadium, December Dallas, still working on November. We'll get the date and all that kind of stuff for the November event shortly. And, of course, that 401k National Conference, Disney World, March 2020. You see a lot of hype now for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge that's opening up at Disneyland, and they'll open up, I think, in August at Disney World. And, of course, that'll be available when you attend the event for us in March. That's going to be a lot of fun. Go to that 401k site for all details of all our events. So, yeah. A lot of things.
And all that at a 30% discount on park tickets.
Yeah, it's
mention that as well.
Right, exactly. It's at the Disney Swan, so there'll be discounts on the hotel and all that kind of stuff. And the tickets are a lot of fun. So it's a Monday, Tuesday conference. take your kids, have a couple days before, and go to the parks. You got 4 parks over there, so it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm certainly looking forward towards that. We got a couple of sponsors already. We're working it, as we get closer to March. So anyway, our topic this week is again these are issues that 401k plan sponsors really need to really focus on. We see too often that 401k plan sponsors are, not lazy, but they're inattentive to some of the tasks that they need to complete as plan sponsors, plan fiduciaries. And, as people in the space, we see it all the time. Constant phone calls. This week I have, an IRS audit for a plan where they inadvertently changed the eligibility every few years and did include a group of people when they made eligibility immediate. And, they assumed that, certain employees were excluded and they weren't. So, that's the nonsense that, that plan sponsors have to go through because they're just not really focusing on what they need to focus on.
Yeah, well, and we talk about it all the time. There are more moving parts to a 401k plan than folks realize. Tracking eligibility, making sure that you get the right people in the plan. That's a big one. That's typically one that I don't see a whole lot of issues with. Outside of maybe an auto enroll that doesn't get applied correctly. But that's definitely one of the ones that I know the IRS has lined up as a top 10.
Well, absolutely. And, plan sponsors don't really understand that they need to care because, they're a... That's a joke that I always said when I was at a certain TPA. That was the first place that I've ever seen a K-Cup machine. I mean, that back in the day, 15 years ago, you didn't have K-Cups available in everybody's house. K-Cups was first for like commercial, places of business who could afford the cups, and you'd have company services. This is before K-Cup machines were K-Cups were available like everywhere. And my running joke was nobody ever complained about benefits when I was at that TPA. Our health insurance got worse and worse every year. Our 401k plan was kind of moved to placate one of the plan providers, the plan custodians that we were working with. And, the running joke was the only time that employees ever complained about was when we got rid of the milk. They stopped paying for milk for the coffee machine. That's the only time people actually complained. And I kind of find it funny because, I didn't drink coffee and I still don't drink coffee. But, a retirement plan is like any other benefit. And, that's 401k plan is just as important, if not more, than a transit benefit, health insurance, and the free milk and coffee, including the gym membership if they're giving you some money back for that. My wife had a job like that where they paid for her gym membership, but they're more 401k plan is a more important employee benefit in the sense that if you don't provide the milk and coffee. People are going to get upset, but you're not going to go to, ERISA jail for it, as I jokingly say. You're not going to get in trouble for it. But if you don't do a good job as a plan fiduciary, you'll subject yourself to some liability, maybe in the form of a IRS, DOL, penalties, or if you're big enough, maybe a lawsuit. So, it's a benefit, but it's a more important benefit when you're a plan fiduciary and you have to have the highest duty of care. Again, you screw up on something. You didn't pay for the gym membership for the 6 months. You didn't reimburse the participant. You'll live to see another day. But when you're handling retirement plan assets, you're a plan fiduciary, so you really have to have the highest standard of care. And I think many plan sponsors don't realize it. They don't realize the whole concept of being a plan fiduciary, the whole concept of liability. And they need to get off their seat and really understand that being a plan fiduciary means that they have to actually, pay attention to the plan. You can't set it and forget it. It's not like, the laundry machine where you're running it on a long cycle and you just, go to your things and once it beeps, you act towards it. Or, you don't want to take it out and you want to have that musty smell, later. You could leave it overnight. But you can't have that luxury with a retirement plan. And we've seen that, haven't we?
Yeah, no, and I right? I mean, that's our primary business, right? Is dealing with plan administration and absorbing liability for plan sponsors that want that additional level of protection. They don't want the headache of running the plan. They don't want to worry that an issue comes up and it's gonna blow up their budgets. I mean, whatever the reason is that they see the value in the services we provide. Yeah, to your point, but they're it's not a Swiss timepiece, right? There's a lot of maintenance, maybe not daily, but definitely a lot of tasks that need to be addressed, every other day, right? Especially if it's a large plan, you've got rollovers, you got distributions, you got loans, you got a ton of things moving, and that's not counting the payroll side of things, right? The data that comes in to the plan every week, and then the deferral changes, the new loan originations that go out. That said, it was funny when you were talking about the coffee and the milk. I mean, we've given the first movie a ton of time, whether it's at the conferences or on the podcast. But wasn't there a scene in Airplane 2 where they ran out of coffee on their as they were careening into the sun, and everyone basically lost it?
That was an Airplane 2. Are you telling us the whole truth? Yes, we're out of coffee, and that but the best part of that was it was like the setup, She's like, I have to tell you a couple things. We're a little bit tad, of course, and
yes.
What does what's a tad? It sounded like Patty Deutsch. I don't think she was in the movie, but it was like a Patty Deutsch type voice. It's a Match Game reference, and we're the noise you hear are like these asteroids, going against the hull of the ship. And, we're headed for the sun, and we've lost our pilot and navigator, and we're programmed to go to the sun, and there's no way back. And the guy who was actually in the first movie, his wife was the one who had the wife had the egg in the mouth, the old egg trick that Leslie Nielsen was playing. And he says, stewardess, no, she actually was the navigator, I think, Elaine. Are you telling us the whole truth? No, we're out of coffee. And all of a sudden, that's what starts the riot. But yeah. Airplane 2 doesn't get as much love as Airplane 1. That's because the Zucker brothers weren't behind it, and a couple of things that weren't good. But I thought the coffee reference you're going to say was a coffee reference in the first movie when the kid who is Little Earl in What's Happening, like the last season, he's in a suit and he says, "Can I sit next to you?" And it was a girl dressed up as a lady, and she's like, "Oh, of course." And would you like some coffee? She says, "Oh, I love some. I like my coffee black, just like my men."
Yes, I love that line.
That was the first movie. So
that line gets used at least once a week.
What, the coffee?
The coffee line, yeah. That's I throw that out a lot. Probably more than I should.
I would think so. Yeah.
I am surprised though.
It could be
as we, dive further into the rabbit hole here. I am surprised that with all the crappy remakes that they've done, they haven't touched Airplane yet.
Well, comedies I think are harder to do, like a remake. I mean, every now and then you'll get something like The Lady Killers. The Coen brothers remade that, and I guess that's a comedy. But yeah, comedies don't really get remade. It's more of the action adventure reboots and all that. They just dropped a trailer for the next Terminator movie, which I always love. It's like Terminator 6, but forget what happened in 3, 4, and 5. It didn't happen. That's a different timeline. We're going back to the end of 2. So, yeah, they haven't done that. So, and hopefully they won't, because I think that's it's a recipe for disaster, because they really don't know how to make an airplane movie, that type of movie anymore. That kind of good stuff.
To your point, the comedy is a lost art.
Yeah, and I think that when you see some of those like spoof movies, they play. What really made Airplane and Naked Gun like that is they always played it straight. And a lot of the ones that you see where it's like something there'd be like making fun of a teenage movie, and they'll throw in every title in there, and they play for laughs. They play for like that one joke. And the beauty of Airplane was based on a serious movie called Zero Hour, where there's a guy named Ted Stryker who saves a ship, saves a plane. He's a war hero from World War II, and he saves a plane because the pilots ate some bad fish. And Kareem was in the movie because Elroy Crazy Leg Hirsch, who was a former L.A. Ram, was the pilot in Airplane. So that's why that movie works. And the same thing with Naked Gun. It's played straight, one of those serious cop movies, and you just have these crazy, they don't play for laughs. They play for you to, kind of notice the joke. When you're driving through Little Italy, and then all of a sudden you see the Roman Colosseum in the background. I mean, that's funny, because you're not playing for the laugh.
It's almost like they make movies for trailers.
Yeah, pretty much. I used to like the old trailers in the 70s where I used to actually have a narrator and actually tell you what the movie's about. They'd have a funny, serious voice, and it just, I always like the setup. Those trailers are better, To me, the trailer for the Poseidon Adventure in 72 is one of my favorite trailers of all time. Or, even a bad trailer like the original Star Wars trailer. If you ever see that, it's like, it could be happening right now. It's a billion years, Star Wars, a billion years in the making. And it was just like, it's about a boy, a girl, and you have to watch on YouTube. It's just awful.
I'm gonna do it after we stop taping our podcast.
Yeah, look for the trailer. It's the trailer from '76. It doesn't even have like the logo, the Star Wars logo. It just says Star Wars, and it's about a boy, a girl. And I'm like, what is? It's like you wouldn't even know what the movie was about just based on like that really bad narration and whatever. But anyway, so we digressed. We went to Airplane 2. But of course, one thing that we need to focus on and is this podcast and the topic at hand. And of course, one of the things that plan sponsors need to focus on are hiring good plan providers.
Yeah, right, and there are different categories within that sort of framework, right? I mean, you got your record keeper, you've got potentially a TPA, third party administrator, and you have folks like us, like 316s. You got your auditors if you're over 100 participants. You got your risk counsels if you ever get yourself in trouble. And I think the advisor acting as a 321 or 338 kind of quarterbacks all that. And from a client's perspective, I think that particular relationship brings a lot more value if that advisor has a team, just like we've spoken about many a time before, right? The whole not necessarily a village concept, but you have a bunch of dedicated professionals, subject matter experts that bring more value to what you do as advisor, and more protection, to the plan sponsor.
I mean, absolutely. It's 401k plan sponsors really need to know what a good TPA does, what a good auditor does, and realize that you just don't you actually have to go check these plan providers out and constantly review them and check their fees and all that, and make sure that they're really up to snuff, because again even like when it comes to a plan advisor, anybody can read a FI 360 report or Morningstar profile, but not everybody knows how to develop an investment policy statement and provide education to plan participants. Same thing with a TPA. Anybody can fill out a 5500, but not everybody knows how to do compliance testing correctly. Not everybody knows how to complete a 5500 correctly as well. So plan sponsors really need to know that the reason, the difference between a plan sponsor that gets in trouble and one that does not can be simply just based on the quality of the plan provider they hired. And again, I got this client, every restatement they changed the eligibility, and now they've had this TPA for 7-8 years, and the plan's been running well. But then the problem is the auditor discovered errors, and now we have some problems that we might actually have to go back to 2007 and start to give plan participants contribution, and that could be very, very costly for um, the plan. Next issue, of course, I talked about it, our fees. I've been in the business long enough where I still think it was odd. Plan sponsors have the fiduciary responsibility to pay reasonable fees, and we lived in a time where they didn't have to know exactly how much they were paying, how much a TPA was getting in revenue sharing. There would be TPAs that would say, "Oh, we're going to reduce your fee," but then don't tell you that they're going to make more money by switching to a more, by picking more revenue sharing paying funds. And plan sponsors need to realize that, yeah, you get these fee disclosures, but you actually have to vet it out and shop the plan services around and all that kind of stuff. So that that's the big to do about fees. Plan sponsors really have to go out and shop the plan and make sure that the fees are reasonable for the services provided.
Every 3 years, right?
Well, depending on the plan. I mean, you have a large enough plan, they should do it every year. A $50 million plan, to me, what's the big deal to hire somebody to do a benchmarking and see what the fees are. It's all, there's never a blueprint, but obviously the larger the plan, the more frequent it should be, because the competition obviously is that much greater, and the concerns about liability and concerns about litigation and all that kind of stuff.
Is there a proper way to benchmark?
You could shop the plans around to other plan providers. You can, they're the 401k average book. There are obviously a lot of providers out there who will take your money and conduct a benchmarking report. So there really is no, home run, like this is the way to go. It is what it is, but at least you can show it's all about a process. So it's never about this one's better than that. It's and this one's the best of all. It's a matter of dotting the T's, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and making sure that you actually review the fees and all that kind of stuff. That's what it's all about.
One more on this. Would you have the existing advisor handle that? Would you bring in, a disinterested third party, potentially another advisor to do that, the understanding that they couldn't take over the plan? Would you, is this something that would fall into your sandbox as an ERISA counsel? Where do you think is the best? Whom do you think is the best to engage to perform this kind of evaluation?
The best evaluation is obviously advice that's not tainted, and bringing in your advisor who may or may not have a connection to the TPA. Certain situations, the TPA is there only because the advisor said to the plan sponsor, we like this, we like these guys. And so, whatever they're going to vet, take their suggestions with a grain of salt because they're kind of biased. And to me, the best advice is impartial advice. Anything that's biased doesn't really work out in my mind. So, that's just my 2 cents. There are times where I could come in, but again, there are other providers out there and other services that can offer it, and I think that's the way to go.
Agreed. Sorry about that. Just got something flashed across the screen and caught my eye.
No problem. Next, and of course, a really important spot on a 401k plan is getting the employees to defer and getting them educated. I think plan participation in terms of the deferral rate is something that plan sponsors don't really consider, and I think they should. When you see a plan with a low participation rate, to me that looks like a sign of a plan that's not optimized, not running efficiently, and I think that's the one rate that I think most plan sponsors don't even really pay attention to, and is probably the most important rate that they should pay attention to, because if you're dealing with a rank and file staff and people aren't participating, there might be something on your end that you're not doing correctly. That could be not offering plan education. That could be too many fund choices. When I've seen plans with 75, 80 plan investment options, and that goes a long way to depressing plan participation because you're just inundated plan participants with too much information, so they um, get paralyzed and decide not to participate. So these are important tasks that again, most plan sponsors that we see don't really pay attention to, and getting plan participants educated is to me a very, very big deal because you have this whole 404C process, and you don't get liability protection as a plan participant for participants investing on their own if you don't have a process in place to provide them with enough information so they can make informed investment decisions. And we see that from time to time with most plans. My joke is, why are plan education and enrollment meetings, more boring than funerals or deader than funerals? That's a problem.
Yeah, my wife likes saying that. That's a problem. No, yeah, it is a problem, and we've talked about it probably 3, 4, 5 times. I mean, I think we're in the middle of developing a product specifically for 404C, and the best way to disseminate timely education, right? I mean, I think if plaintiff's bar or a regulator were to focus in on how inept I think the industry is in actually complying with that, with the true definition of 404C, we'd be in a lot of trouble. I mean, even when I was a consultant, we talked about 404C all the time, but maybe we did meetings once a year, maybe twice a year. I mean, we've talked about it. It should be at least twice a year, and potentially every quarter, some sort of update. Some sort of education, not advice, right? Education. Advice is great, but that's sort of a different elephant. But definitely some sort of education.
Yeah, you really got to get them, understanding some basic concepts, and that's the best way to go. And of course, another thing that we see, I just got a question about yesterday: getting the proper insurance. ERISA plans need a bond. Fiduciary liability insurance is not required. I just got a question yesterday from a TPA. Does an ERISA 403B plan need does it need bond? And the answer is yes. Yeah, you're a Department of Labor covered plan. You need a bond. That's different from fiduciary liability insurance, and I think that any plan that has any participants that are not owners, which means DOL covered plans, should get fiduciary liability insurance just as a great method of protection. You never know what happens, but if you ever do get sued, it's nice to have that protection in place. And I had a client once who got sued, and $1 million of legal fees, and insurance paid for $900,000 worth of it. So that's important that plan sponsors need to deal with.
Yeah, no, we're actually in the middle of renewing our coverages as we speak. Always a giant pain in the butt, but in the business we're in, we couldn't exist without coverages. So very, very important.
And last but not least for this broadcast, keeping good records. Now, how many times have I been in a plan audit and the plan sponsor doesn't have the restatement that they need, or they're missing some, on a late deferral, they're missing some of the deposit confirmations of the late deposits. IRS has this funny thing that if you don't have a record of it, they assume you didn't do it, which, they're all about evidence. They're all about documentary evidence. And, I just had I've had an audit for now a year on Department of Labor, late deferrals, and the agent says, I need those confirmations for 2015, otherwise I assume they weren't made. And then the plan sponsor says, it's going to be a problem, get it from Transamerica, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, great. that's not my problem. That's your problem. And if they have it, they have it. And they're going to give it to you. And if it takes time, it takes time. But you can't go to the IRS and say, hey, or DOL and say, hey, I don't have it. They assume you didn't do it. And that's the same thing with restatements. How many times, oh, I swore up and down that we did that document. We just don't have a copy of it. So it's really important for plan sponsors to keep good records. Never throw out your plan documents. Jeez, one time I worked for a client. It was a union client. We had to work on some documents from 1976. Dealing with crediting for a union plan. So you keep a lot of records for 7 years. Great, but don't throw out the plan documents and don't throw out certain other important facets of information, because if you don't have it, when you need it, it really becomes a problem.
In that vein, I actually have a question. What do you think plan sponsors should do? What do you think is the best way outside of and their perils with electronic delivery as well, but for annual notices, stuff like the safe harbor, the fee disclosure, a blackout notice, what's the best way to document that those are disseminated?
Well, the most important thing is to actually have them on file, and you'll tell them that we gave them out. We always would get complaints back in the day of really can't I just I have a drawer full of this stuff, can't I just get rid of it? And we live in a day and age where I work pretty much out of my house, and my office is downstairs, and when Hurricane Sandy hit, I had a file drawer of papers. And for 6 months, it stood outside my house to dry. And after that, I said, you know what? Forget it. We have PDFs. We have electronic signings and all that kind of stuff. Why do I need paper anymore? And, let a scanner be your friend. Just keep that stuff. Put it on the network drive. There's no reason. There are times when they will ask for originals. Back in the day when you did an IRS termination or a PBGC termination, they wanted I haven't done one of those in a long time, but, signed the certification. They want the certificate to terminate the plan. They wanted the original for that. But, most times IRS will take copies, and, as long as you have it on a system and saved away, you're fine. And, even simple notices like the safe harbor, they need to keep it. Just because you need to have it. Just because you don't want to deal with an agent who's going to say, "Oh, you don't have it, so therefore you didn't do it, and therefore you don't have a safe harbor contribution." And by the way, you made it, but now you failed. You don't need that kind of headache.
Understood.
So I think that's going to be it for this week. Until next week, which will be 1 week closer to Denver, and 1 week closer to nicer and nicer weather. But it's been pretty nice lately. So anyway,
the past week's been wonderful.
Yeah, we've had the spring of rain. Now we're getting some little nice weather. But anyway, we'll talk to you guys next week, and same podcast. Same 401k topics. Talk to you later, guys. Take care.
Have a great weekend.